In 1952, babies were born into a world of fear and anxiety. The Cold War nuclear standoff between the United States and the Soviet Union was well underway, and it would loom over life on Earth for the balance of the 20th century. The Today Show was one of those 1952 newborns, and tracking the many twists and turns of the Cold War was inevitably central to its mission. The Korean conflict, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the rise and eventual fall of the Berlin Wall, and finally the astonishing collapse of the Soviet Empire all unfolded on today's morning broadcasts. There were other events, of course, including some inspiring, joyous occasions, like astronaut Neil Armstrong stepping onto the surface of the moon and the end of apartheid in South Africa. But disaster, whether natural or manufactured, was all too abundant. The assassinations of John F. Kennedy, Robert Kennedy, and Martin Luther King Jr., earthquakes in Los Angeles and San Francisco, genocide in Rwanda, terrorism in Oklahoma, and September 11th. The Today Show brought all of it, the tragedies along with the triumphs, into our homes.
Thanks, Hugh. Good morning, everyone. The reported diversion of some Russian supply ships en route to Cuba appears to have stalled off an immediate showdown on the high seas between the Soviet Union and the United States. This would allow time for diplomats to try to find a peaceful way out of the potentially explosive crisis. President Kennedy reportedly has left the door open for a possible summit conference with Premier Khrushchev, but Mr. Kennedy is sticking firmly to his immediate objective to put an end to Soviet nuclear missile bases in Cuba. Khrushchev suggested the summit meeting yesterday in a letter to British philosopher Bertrand Russell. The Soviet premier also sent a letter to President Kennedy, but it reportedly did not mention a top-level meeting, merely a rehashing of Russian objections to the Cuban blockade. The Pentagon, meanwhile, said some communist ships headed for Cuba appear to have altered their courses. Others, not Russian, are still on their way, indicating that perhaps the Kremlin wants to test the blockade with ships from satellite nations. There are reports from Warsaw that Polish ships are en route to Cuba and would, if challenged, probably submit to search under protest. President Kennedy is expected to reply today to a compromise proposal made by acting UN Secretary General U Thant. Thant urged Mr. Kennedy to hold off on the blockade of Cuba and asked Khrushchev to suspend the shipment of all Soviet arms to Cuba. Mr. Kennedy is expected to politely reject the proposal since it offers no guarantees for removal of missiles from Cuba. Thant made the suggestion yesterday at a meeting of the UN Security Council.
Today is Saturday, November 23rd, 1963, the day after the assassination of President John F. Kennedy. The nation and the world today mourn the 46-year-old chief executive whose life was ended by a sniper's bullet as he rode through the streets of Dallas, Texas. I'm Hugh Downs. This is today a special 3-hour program on the death of John Kennedy and the succession of Lyndon Baines Johnson to the greatest responsibility in the world. Jack Lascouli and Frank Blair are with me today, and together we'll report on a tragedy that has stunned and saddened men everywhere. We're going to begin our report by switching to NBC's Sander Van Oker at the White House in Washington.
Body now lies in repose in the White House. It was brought here this morning by his wife and by his brother, the Attorney General. It came in a Navy ambulance from the Bethesda Naval Hospital, where it had been taken earlier after the flight back from Dallas. It was taken through the northwest entrance to the White House on Pennsylvania Avenue at about 4:25 this morning, and was preceded slowly by an honor guard as it moved up the driveway to the north portico, followed by cars filled with the top officials of this government.
The President of the United States is dead. The body of John Fitzgerald Kennedy is at this moment, as Sander Van Oker mentioned, in the White House. And it's a much saddened nation and world that greets this day a far different greeting from that of yesterday. There are things throughout the nation. The atmosphere is very different, of course, from what it has been any time within my memory. And Jack, if you have some on that at this time.
Well, as we were talking earlier about it, you and Frank Blair and I, there are particular instances wherein a person can tell exactly where they were when they happened. Pearl Harbor was one. and you will carry that particular scar to your grave. You will know where you heard the news about Pearl Harbor. You would know certainly where you heard the news when President Roosevelt died. And certainly, you know exactly where you were yesterday and when you heard the news and how you heard it. Everybody just a little bit different. It seemed to me that the shock of it in New York slowed everything down. Traffic seemed to slow just and not move. Every window in every car as you passed and drove on the street had the radio playing. Most of them watching every single minute, the reaction, wondering. People were very quiet when they talked. Trunk lines jammed in the telephone company. You couldn't get a call even to your home. People wanting to tell everyone else, wanting to almost share this bad news with the reaction. I'm sure if you tried to call NBC yesterday, it was almost impossible.
I first thought it was the local switchboards, but actually the telephone company was so set upon. You know what Adlai Stevenson said? That it's beyond instant comprehension. That's something that's coming home to me now more than in the initial shock, because there's something about the nature of shock that mercifully keeps you from understanding exactly all the implications at the time. And I think that's what's happening to the nation, is that as the hours go by, the shock, as it begins to wear off, the comprehension of what this means broadens, and a different kind of grief sets in, a more historic kind.
To Dallas, Texas, and Tom Pettit.
There is the prisoner. There is Lee Oswald. He's been shot. He's been shot. Lee Oswald has been shot. There's the man with a gun. It's absolute panic here in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters. The detectives have their guns drawn. Oswald has been shot. There is no question about it. Oswald has been shot. Pandemonium has broken loose here in the basement of Dallas Police Headquarters. Now, that's the situation here at Dallas Police Headquarters in the basement. We're in this story which has been so unreal from the very beginning. As Lee Oswald, 24 years old, was attempting to move through a crowd to the armored car where he was to be transferred to the Dallas County Jail. As Oswald came out, he was asked, did you shoot the president or something along those lines? And at that hour, at that moment, at that instant, sometime about 11:15 in Dallas, someone walked up to Oswald. At point-blank range, fired into his stomach. An ambulance now is coming here. This will be the ambulance to take Lee Oswald to wherever he will receive medical treatment. It is almost unbelievable. It's almost unbelievable. This is the back end of the ambulance.
If you can get back further. If you can get back further. As far as I know, no.
Do you have the man who fired?
We have a man, yes. I didn't hear you.
The back of the ambulance has been opened. Police and detectives are now standing cordoned off. Here comes a squad car driving in from the north side of the Dallas Police basement. Yes, you have one man, do you not,
Yes.
Captain?
Yes, I didn't see it, so we've got the man I think did it.
Here he comes. Here's Oswald again. He is now lying very pale on the stretcher. He's being put into the ambulance, head first. There's a group of detectives around the rear end of the ambulance. Now they have the problem that the ambulance is blocked by the armored car out on Commerce Street. The armored car, which was to take Lee Oswald to Dallas County Jail, now is blocking the exit of the ambulance, which is to take him to a hospital.
Good morning. This is today, Monday, September 18th, and that is the White House, where last night an historic announcement was made. Egypt and Israel have agreed on the terms for peace. And tonight, President Carter will describe for Congress the historic breakthrough. This was the scene in the White House East Room as President Carter, President Sadat, and Israeli Prime Minister Begin concluded their nationally televised announcement of a framework for peace in the Middle East. Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Brokaw with Today in Washington this morning. President Carter, President Sadat, and Israeli Prime Minister Begin arrived in this capital last night from Camp David to make their historic and dramatic announcement of a framework for peace in the Middle East.
The Camp David Summit Agreement between Egypt and Israel is being hailed this morning as an extraordinary accomplishment on the road to peace. Both President Sadat and Prime Minister Begin will have some persuading to do among their own people, and whether Jordan and perhaps other Arab nations can be induced to agree is still a major question. But few deny last night's announcement represents an incredible achievement. Here's Judy Woodruff.
It was President Carter who had decided to call the Egyptian and the Israeli leaders together for the summit meeting, and it was Mr. Carter who explained the results of 13 days of work. The first document they were signing, he said, was a framework for peace in the Middle East, a set of principles and specifics governing a future comprehensive settlement between Israel and all her Arab neighbors.
The framework document proposes a 5-year transitional period in the West Bank and Gaza, during which the Israeli military government will be withdrawn and a self-governing authority will be elected with full autonomy. It also provides for Israeli forces to remain in specified locations during this period to protect Israel's security. The Palestinians will have the right to participate in the determination of their own future, in negotiations which will resolve the final status of the West Bank and Gaza, and then to produce an Israeli-Jordanian peace treaty. These negotiations will be based on all the provisions and all the principles of United Nations Security Council Resolution 242.
Approximately 11 o'clock this evening, John Lennon arrived at the emergency room at the Roosevelt Hospital. He was dead at the time of his arrival. Numerous resuscitative efforts were made after his arrival in the hospital, including transfusions, surgical procedures, other procedures, but in spite of the effort of many physicians and after many procedures, we were unable to restore the life of Mr. Lennon.
Good morning, everyone. I'm Tom Brokaw. This is Today, December 9th. I'm here with Jane Pauley, and this entire half hour will be devoted to the murder of John Lennon, ex-Beatle, one of the best-known musicians and most influential people of his time. As you heard Dr. Stephen Lynn at Roosevelt Hospital in New York City say, Lennon was shot and killed at about 11 o'clock last night outside his apartment building. News of the Lennon shooting, of course, spread quickly around the world. NBC News correspondent Stephen Frazier tells what happened last night on Manhattan's West Side.
Witnesses told police Lennon was shot near the door to his apartment building as he and Yoko Ono returned from a recording studio.
I saw John and Yoko get out of the limousine. They walked into the gate, and oh God, let me take your time. And then I heard four or five shots. They were ear shattering. They were ear shattering. I heard Yoko, and I heard a woman screaming. It was Yoko. She was screaming, "Help me!"
Lennon's building is home for many celebrities. Strangers waiting for a glimpse of some resident are not uncommon. The man accused of shooting Lennon dropped his gun afterward and waited for police to arrive. A detective who questioned him at a nearby police station said he is Mark Chapman, a 25-year-old Hawaiian who has been in New York 1 week. At the hospital where Lennon was taken, young people prayed.
He's not dead. John Lennon can't be dead.
Mark Chapman, charged with the murder of John Lennon, will be arraigned later this morning. Stephen Frazier, NBC News, New York.
We're back. Good morning, everyone. It's 8 o'clock. We have an extraordinary story developing out of Cairo this morning. An Egyptian military parade, an anti-tank brigade passing the reviewing stand, which included President Sadat and the defense minister. According to reporters on the scene, the anti-tank brigade then turned its guns on the reviewing stand. There are now reports that President Sadat and the defense minister were hit and taken by helicopter to a hospital, although there has been no official confirmation of this, no official confirmation from the Egyptian government. Egyptian communications are extremely difficult, but we do have standing by right now Art Kent on the telephone from Cairo this morning. Art, what more do we know? Kent, are you there?
Good morning, Tom. This is Art Kent in Cairo. As you can imagine, there is a considerable amount of confusion here, but the most recent information we have is that President Sadat was, in fact, shot and wounded during an assassination attempt during a parade celebrating the anniversary of the October 1973 war. The information we have to this point indicates that as one of the trucks in the parade was passing the reviewing stand, suddenly grenades, possibly rifle grenades, were fired at the reviewing stand. Moments later, several soldiers jumped out of the truck and began to fire at the reviewing stand. President Sadat and the defense minister were hit. Vice President Hosni Mubarak, who was on the other side of the reviewing stand, was not hurt. Mrs. Sadat has been airlifted by helicopter from the presidential residence in Giza to Wadi Military Hospital, and two of the president's daughters have also been taken there by motorcade. There is no information at this point as to the extent of the injuries of President Sadat or of the defense minister.
The wall in Berlin physically does still stand, but it no longer is a barrier. The party that began with Thursday's ending of travel restrictions by the East German government shows no signs of ending. East Germany had planned to implement visa requirements today, but given the crush of people, it has decided to wait until next week. At least 80 people have died trying to scale the Wall to Freedom, but today thousands of Berliners stand atop the wall in full view of East German police. The question, what next, is prominent this morning given the rapid turn of events, but it is probably unanswerable. NBC's Tom Brokaw is at Brandenburg Gate in West Berlin this morning, I guess sort of watching history unfold, Tom.
Mark the date on your calendar, Deborah. This is the 10th of November, 1989. It is the beginning, it appears, of a new age, not only in Europe, but throughout the world. This is the day that the Cold War ended not with a bang, but with a street party throughout East and West Berlin. A remarkable development here. Not so long ago, I was atop the wall with all those young people. Just as I got up there, a group of them dropped off onto the other side, and this is what happened. They began to approach the East German guards who were aligned in front of the Brandenburg Gate. They offered them roses, a gesture of peace, as their colleagues and their comrades cheered them on. The East German police made no threatening moves, highly unusual. And another day, not so long ago, these young people would have been shot or certainly imprisoned. Today, they were escorted gently back toward the wall. And later, one of the young men who went down to greet the guards said to me, they had tears in their eyes. I told them I simply wanted to go to East Berlin. But today, at least, he was not able to, through this way at least.
Rescue workers are still sifting through the rubble of the Alfred P. Murrah Federal Building this morning looking for survivors and clues. They have been at this throughout the night, continuing a gruesome job at a nonstop pace since the bomb went off. That was almost 20 hours ago. Its repercussions will be felt for some time to come. And good morning. Welcome to today on what is a very grim Thursday morning. You can see the federal building right behind me, or what's left of it, 9 stories with a hole blown in the north wall. This is the morning paper this morning in the Daily Oklahoman. It speaks of a morning of terror, and indeed that's what we've had. Katie Couric is back in New York, and from there and from here we're going to try to dissect exactly what happened here, what's being done now to help those who survived the blast, and also to help this community recover. Katie, good morning.
Ryan, good morning. You know, it's so horrifying to watch these pictures from afar. I can only imagine how difficult it is to be there up close. We're going to be getting the very latest from the White House this morning. We'll be hearing from several survivors, including this man whose dramatic rescue many of us watched yesterday.
President Clinton has declared this a federal emergency.
Bob Ricks is the special agent in charge of the FBI office in Oklahoma City.
We have at this time no assumptions with regard to who caused this particular bombing. And we have had hundreds if not thousands, of leads from individuals calling in to reputed eyewitnesses.
Among the leads, investigators are concentrating on the remains of a minivan that was suspected of carrying more than 1,000 pounds of explosives that caused this damage. The car bomb left a crater 30 feet long and 8 feet deep. It injured at least 200 people, 58 of them critically. Rescue workers are painstakingly going over the building, floor by floor, looking for survivors under the tangled steel beams and broken concrete. They are also looking for structural damage because they fear the building could collapse at any time.
It's difficult for us to put equipment and stuff in there because of the weight that we add to the building, and that's dangerous to do that. So we've got to be very, very careful in doing that.
At least 80 FBI and ATF agents have been assigned to the investigation in Oklahoma City alone. Governor Frank Keating welcomes the additional police support because
it's here in the middle of the country, a very peaceful, very serene, very fun area in which to live. We had the most senseless, brutal, and certainly loss of life, the most serious terrorist attack in American history.
On close-up this morning, President Nelson Mandela. It was just over a month ago that he was inaugurated, the overwhelming choice in that country's first multiracial elections.
I, Nelson Mandela, do hereby swear to be faithful to the Republic of South Africa.
It was a day of joyous celebration that has now given way to the hard business of governing. But the mood of South Africa remains one of optimism, determination, and most of all, change. Live from Cape Town this morning, we are pleased to welcome President Nelson Mandela. Mr. President, good morning.
Good morning.
Thank you very much for being with us. There is certainly still a newness to your administration. Has the reality of governing surprised you in any way, or has it been about as you thought it would prove to be?
Well, naturally, this is our first experience in government, and we are not immune to teething problems of a new process in which we find ourselves. But we have had a good preparation for the task of governance, because in our organization we had different departments which coincide with the departments in which we are working in government. And therefore, we come with a background which has made it comparatively easy for us to assume our new responsibility. And the spirit of cooperation, not between amongst the leaders in the government of national unity, as well as the wide and unexpected support from all sections of the populations, black and white, has made the task for us comparatively easy.
And good morning. Welcome to this Tuesday edition of Today, another split edition of our program, because while I'm here in New York, Katie is still at Buckingham Palace in London. Katie, good morning to you.
Matt, good morning to you. The crowds here at Buckingham Palace are even bigger than they were yesterday, and they're also stunning at St. James Palace, about a quarter of a mile from here, where people have been lining up for as long as 6 hours to sign the condolence books that have been placed there. As this country prepares for Princess Diana's funeral on Saturday, the story has taken a dramatic turn. As you can see in this morning's papers, the headlines read in The Guardian, the car was doing 121 miles an hour and the driver was drunk. The Independent, killed by drunken driving, not fame. And in the Times this morning, Princess's driver was drunk. Catch me if you can, taunt to chasing paparazzi, apparently alluding to the comment the driver made shortly before that fateful trip through that tunnel of death. We're going to have the details on this story and the rest of the details pertaining to it throughout the morning from London, Matt.
All right, Katie. Also this morning, we'll talk about the effect Diana had on the worlds of fashion and charity and how her death will affect both. We'll meet the ex-fiancé of Dodi Al-Fayed, who yesterday said she was dropping that lawsuit she'd filed against him when his relationship with Diana was revealed. But before we get to all that, let's start with the latest overnight news from Ann Curry at the news desk. Ann, good morning.
Good morning, Matt. Good morning, everybody. This morning, new developments in the investigation of the crash that killed Princess Diana. Her driver was not only drunk, it has been confirmed his blood alcohol level was 3 times the legal limit. And today, French prosecutors said that they're considering charges of involuntary manslaughter against the photographers who were trailing Diana's car. We get more now from Richard Roth in Paris.
Authorities have now begun to read clues to what happened in the wreckage that was left behind. Police sources said the speedometer on the Mercedes was frozen at 121 miles an hour after the crash, though prosecutors today deny that. But reports today claim the car's driver wasn't just trying to avoid photographers, he may have been taunting them in a deadly game of catch me if you can. His name was Henri Paul, and he was a security man at the Ritz Hotel, owned by Dodi Fayed's family. He was called back to work from home Saturday night so that Fayed's regular driver could be dispatched as a decoy in an empty car to draw off the paparazzi.
There was every reason for everyone, the driver, Dodi, Di, the bodyguard, everybody in the car, and anyone at the Ritz to think this guy, who was the assistant director of security at the Ritz with all this training, would be the guy who could get in the car and lose these paparazzi.
But it turns out he was drunk. His blood alcohol level tested after the crash 3 times the legal limit, as if he'd had 10 glasses of wine. Even so, says a lawyer for the Fayed family, that was just one link in a chain of tragedy he blames on the photographers, who some eyewitnesses say didn't just chase the car, but may have also hindered rescue efforts.
Craig, how are you doing this morning?
It's hard.
You were in the library with Isaiah and another good friend. I know this is so difficult, but can you tell me a little bit about what happened?
I went into the library to go do some homework, and before I could even take out my stuff, my books from my backpack, I had sat with a friend of mine, Matt Kechter. I knew him from class, and I talked to him on the phone on the night before, and we heard what sounded like fireworks, and I thought it was a prank, a senior prank, and I was joking around about it and treated it like it was some kind of prank, until a faculty member ran in and was screaming that someone had a gun and was shooting other students out there.
You ducked under the desk, Craig.
Yeah, she told us to duck under the desk, and I just still didn't think it was real. I thought the teacher was in on it or something. It just didn't seem real. And
you pulled Isaiah under. You said, "Come on, get down."
Yeah,
here.
I saw Isaiah, and Isaiah, I really liked Isaiah. The first time I met him, he always made me laugh. Everybody that knew Isaiah, he was really he'd always tell us stories, and he was just a fun kid to be around. And I wish I could give him a hug today so bad. I saw him. I said, "Hey, Isaiah," and he came under the table and he said, "What's up?" And he sat between me and Matt. And that's when the 2 tall kids with trench coats on, they came into the library, and they were shooting off their guns at people, and they came in and they were harassing students before they shot them.
They were saying racial slurs to Isaiah.
Yeah, they said, get any effing jock. They said get anybody with a white hat on, because that's a lot of jocks wear white hats, and they
baseball caps.
Right, I was wearing a white hat, and I threw it under my shirt. And Isaiah did kind of look. He was a buff little kid, and he looked like a jock. He was well built. And they walked by and they saw Isaiah, and one of them said to the other one, they said there's a N-word over here. And the other kid came over, and saw him, and Isaiah tried to back up. Isaiah didn't say anything, and they shot Isaiah. And then they shot my friend Matt also.
And then you played dead, Craig.
Yeah, I just ended up laying on the floor. I was praying to God to give me courage and to keep protection over us, and he told me to get out of there. He told me God told me to get out of there, and I got up, and everybody was in shock. And I told everybody, I go, let's get out of here. Let's run out of here. And they all got up, and some girl asked me to help her. Her arm was, she had a chunk of her shoulder was blown off by a shotgun. And some kind of rifle, some bigger weapon, and I helped her get out. She was bleeding all over the place, and her bone was showing, and I helped her get out. And the kids were so nervous, they ran into a room, and the exit was right in front of us. They were so shocked, they just all ran into a room, and then they realized to run out the exit. And that's when we ran out to the through the exit and to the cops.
So let's recap for a moment. We still don't know who the 43rd president will be. The race hinges on Florida and its 25 electoral votes. The vote count there gives a razor-thin margin to Governor George Bush. A recount has been ordered. Meanwhile, as of now, Vice President Al Gore has won the popular vote. Clearly, it's been a long and interesting night, and NBC's Tom Brokaw and Tim Russert have been covering every twist and turn. Gentlemen, good morning, good evening. I don't think you know where you are, do you?
Well, we know that we're in a state of confusion, not only personally, but in our electoral map at this point. I think it's very important that you have a president-elect who has been elected by the country legitimately under the rules of the Constitution, the Electoral College.
That's different from saying elected by the people of this country.
That's true, but we do have a system in place. Everyone knew what the rules were going in. It's also important to say that in the state of Florida, they moved with dispatch to get the recount done, and that everyone feels good about how it was conducted during the course of this recount that's going to go over the next couple of days or so. And I think it's important for these two campaigns to be in touch with each other so that we don't have what amounts to a political catfight going on while the presidency is still unresolved.
If we try and play psychologist for a second here, Tim, and we listen to the statements coming out from William Daley and from Ari Fleischer, it seems as if the Bush campaign is slightly more confident about what will transpire in Florida than the Gore campaign is. Do they have reason to be?
Well, they think they have a 1,700 vote lead right now, and that the absentee ballots will only add to that. But it's still, Matt, even in an ideal situation, a couple thousand votes out of 6 million cast. And who knows when those computers start churning and checking every vote, what can happen? If Al Gore wins the popular vote in Florida, he's the next president of the United States. This is dead serious business.
Let's turn back the clock a little while, because you've been on this program an awful lot in the last couple of weeks. Do we have the tape of Tim's comments from just a couple of weeks ago? Tim, here's what you said. 2 days ago, actually. What's the key element we should be watching for throughout the day tomorrow?
Florida, Florida, Florida. I honestly believe, Matt, as goes Florida, will go the nation. If I'm mistaken, I'll be the first to admit it, but I think that is the critical state, and we should have a pretty good sense how that's going, because the polls close at 7 o'clock.
All right, Tim, and if you're wrong, we invite you to admit you're wrong right here on the air.
I'll come eat crow with you, buddy.
Thanks
Anytime.
very much. Tim Russert. First of all, just thanks so you don't have to grovel on our air, and there you've got the sign. You were absolutely right. It all boiled down to 25 electoral votes in Florida.
But the first thing that happened at 7 o'clock, of course, was the state was awarded to Al Gore.
Right.
The man was a bit compulsive, let's face it, but on the other hand, he was absolutely the most amazing man that America has ever created, ever.
Okay, I have got to interrupt you right now.
Sorry.
Richard Hack, thank you very much. We appreciate the book is called Hughes. We want to go live right now and show you a picture of the World Trade Center, where I understand, do we have it? No, we do not. We have a breaking story, though. We're going to come back with that in just a moment. First, this is Today on NBC.
As Matt just mentioned, we have a breaking news story to tell you about. Apparently, a plane has just crashed into the World Trade Center here in New York City. It happened just a few moments ago, apparently. We have very little information available at this point in time, but on the phone we do have Jennifer Oberstein, who apparently witnessed this event. Jennifer, can you hear me?
Hello?
Hi, Jennifer.
Hi, Katie.
Hi, can you please tell me what you saw and to give me any information about what's going on there?
Yes, I have to tell you, it's quite terrifying. I'm in shock right now. I came out of the subway at Bowling Green. I was heading to work in Battery Park at the Ritz-Carlton Hotel, and I come out, and I heard a boom, looked up, and there was a big ball of fire. I'm now looking north at the World Trade Center, and it is the left twin tower if I'm looking north. I'm in Battery Park right now, and you can hear the fire engines and the emergency crews behind me, and it is unbelievable. When the fire first burst, it was a... Hello?
Go ahead. We can hear you.
In air like I've never seen before, and as you know, I used to work in news. I've never seen any fire like this in the air, and the pieces of the building were flying down. It looks like it's like the top, I can't even tell you, maybe 20 floors. Intense smoke. It's horrible. I can't even describe it to you.
Do you have any idea what kind of plane it was?
I'm sorry?
Do you have any idea what hit the World Trade Center?
What it was?
Yeah, what kind of plane? We're getting reports that an airplane hit the building.
Oh, I didn't even know that. Honestly, I was walking up, and it looked up and saw a big boom and fire. You know, I got to tell you, we were all saying around here that it was very interesting that it would be a bomb and it would be so high up. So perhaps it was a plane. We have no talk of a plane. However, I have to tell you, there are still things flying in the air. I mean, it's mind-boggling, and it's horrifying.
Jennifer, it's Matt Lauer. I'd like to ask you, while you were close to the building, or have you, since the explosion, seen anyone who's been injured being taken out of the building? Are there ambulances dealing with people on the sidewalk around the building?
No, I have not. I have not gotten that close. I have to tell you that my father works in the World Financial Center, and I first called over there to see, because it's next door, to see, you know, if he was okay. I couldn't get through, and I'm far away right now. I thought it might be a little dangerous to get too close. I saw lots of debris coming down, and right now I'm in Battery Park. I don't know, you know, it's probably a 5-minute walk from here to the World Trade Center, but the smoke is incredible. I mean, I can't see the top of the tower, and it's starting to cover the top of the second tower.
In fact, we're looking at pictures right now, Jennifer, with a huge gaping hole on the side of the building and billowing smoke. So
I'm right now, you see, yeah, I see major fire. I definitely see fire.
And Jennifer, you said you're looking north at the building, so in other words, you're south of the building, is that right? Because we're looking at a picture that is looking at the north side of the building.
I'm on the exact opposite side.
And it appears that is where the largest hole is. And again, as you mentioned correctly, toward the top of the building, but on the north side, and then on the, what I think is the west side of the building, we can also see some holes there that could have been from damage once the impact occurred. Again, we've been told that this is a plane. We don't have confirmation on that, but there is an enormous hole in the north side of that building.
Jennifer, can you tell us a little bit more about what you heard when you heard this explosion? Describe it for us.
Absolutely. When I walked out of the subway, I looked at the Twin Towers because, I mean, I just always look up there. And right when I looked up, there was a boom. It wasn't that loud. Like, it wasn't huge. However, what was unbelievable was the amount of fire. It was a big ball of fire that just went up. And I looked around at people. We were all horrified. I'm stuttering because I'm in such shock. I've never seen anything like it. It's just horrible.
And of course, this is real cause for concern because the World Trade Center is one of the busiest office buildings here in New York, with hundreds, perhaps thousands of workers
New York State Governor has his office, New York City office there.
Several thousand and of course, given the time that this has happened, it's only probably appropriate to surmise that people might have been in the building.
And you know, we've seen stories in the past where planes have hit buildings, small planes, and it would be hard to imagine that a small plane could create that kind of hole in a building like the World Trade Center and create the damage on the other side of the building from the sheer impact. Small planes tend to crumple and then fall down the building. Again, we haven't talked to anyone who's close to the base of the building, so we don't know what kind of debris or wreckage. Yes, go ahead, Jennifer.
I'm sorry, I'm just talking to a police officer right here, and he says yes, he heard it was a plane.
Does he have any information about what kind of plane it was, or can he tell us any more details?
May I, I'm going to put you on hold for one moment, okay?
Just to recap, if you're just joining us, you're looking at dramatic pictures of New York's World Trade Center in Lower Manhattan, where a short time ago we are told that a plane crashed into the upper floors of the westernmost tower. You can see a gaping hole. That is on the north side of the building, and you can see residual damage on the west side of that building, and obviously fires are burning right now in the World Trade Center.
Elliot, have you, of course, because of the incident that occurred in the early 1990s, have you seen any evidence, Elliot, of people being taken out of the building? You say that emergency vehicles are there, understandably so, but of course the major concern is human loss. I mean, do you know if there were many people in the building at the time?
Another one just hit. Something else just hit. A very large plane just flew directly over my building, and there's been another collision. Can you see it? I can see it on the shot.
Oh my!
Something else has
You know what? We just saw a plane circling the building. We just saw a plane circling the building a second ago on the shot right before that.
I think there may have been another impact. Can you tell? I just heard another very loud bang, and a very large plane that might have been a DC-9 or a 747 just flew past my window, and I think it may have hit the Trade Center again.
To be honest, Elliot, I didn't get the impression that it was that big a plane.
It looks big from here.
I did see a plane go by a second ago, though, and it has now impacted the building. I'm trying to see if it's the different tower.
I think it may have been. I believe the first one was World Trade Center 1, and it looks, from what I'm seeing on the television, like it may have been the second building that was hit.
This is a piece of tape, and we may actually see another plane enter the picture here in a second.
I wonder if there are air traffic control problems.
Let's go back to Jennifer Oberstein, who was talking to a second ago. Jennifer, did you see this happen?
Hello?
Did you just see this happen, Jennifer?
Matt, I've never seen any. It looks like a movie. I saw a large plane, like a jet, go immediately headed directly into the World Trade Center. It just flew into it, into the other tower, coming from south to north. I watched the plane fly into the World Trade Center. It was a jet. It was a very large plane. It was going fast. It went past the Ritz-Carlton Hotel that's being built in Battery Park. It flew right past it, almost hit it, and then went in.
This is so shocking, of course, to everybody watching.
I've never seen anything like it. It literally flew itself into World Trade Center.
Obviously now we move from what appears to have, there it is right there.
Again, I'm looking from south to north,
and
it went into the one on the right.
That appeared to be at least a 727. We saw it a second ago. Here comes the videotape that we just showed you. You will see what appears to be a large plane. It could be a 727 right there, maybe even bigger, flying right into the side of the World Trade Center.
It was at least a 727. It was a jet. I couldn't believe my eyes watching it right above me.
And now you have to move from talk about a possible accident to talk about something deliberate that has happened here. We're going to immediately check with air traffic control in the area to find out if they had contact with either of these planes before the accident, but what we've just seen is about the most shocking videotape I've ever seen.
What are the odds of two separate planes hitting both towers?
This is an exceptional development. The FAA has banned all takeoffs at all airports across America. This country, in terms of air travel, has been immobilized. A good portion of the nation's capital, the most powerful center in the world, has been immobilized as well as a result of these terrorist
And that's
attacks.
a very haunting description that Bob Kerr just gave of that low-flying aircraft near the White House, and one can only wonder if that was something that ultimately ended up in the Pentagon.
We just saw a live picture of what seemed to be a portion of the building falling away from the World Trade Center. If we can re-rack that to about 20 seconds ago, you'll see something dramatic happening, and I don't know whether it's another explosion or a portion of the building falling away, but something major just happened at that building. Here we go to the tape.
We have the tape.
And watch what happens in the left-hand tower. I don't know if this is the correct tape. There, something there is about to happen, falling away right there.
Yeah, it looks like a big chunk of it has just peeled away.
One can only hope that the area has been evacuated, but of course you wonder about all the emergency vehicles and the people who might have been injured early in the morning.
Well, you remember when the bomb went off in the basement of it in 1993, how much damage was done throughout that building, how much chaos there was at that time. These are 2 coordinated airplane attacks on the building on the upper reaches of it. That will have an enormous structural effect.
Office of Anchorman Tom Brokaw. Tom, good morning. Nice to have
Morning,
you
Matt.
here. Let's talk about your assistant who was exposed to the anthrax. How's she doing?
She's recovering physically. Obviously, it's a very emotional time for her family. I think that it's fair to say that she's very concerned about other people who may have been exposed as well. At some point, she'll be able to characterize it for herself. I've talked to her a lot over the weekend, and it's understandable. There is a lot of emotion in the family, and I think also some anger, probably.
Anger at who?
Oh, I don't think it's up to me to say that. I think anger at the situation. She and her husband for several days had been kind of raising their hands and ringing bells when this skin mass lesion developed. Before I even knew about it, by the way, because it's so typical of her not to involve me in her personal concerns. And a number of public health people and even the FBI said to her, that original powder that you thought was the origin of all of this is tested negative. We don't think it's anthrax.
There was a second NBC News employee, or NBC employee, who was exposed to anthrax.
Right.
Same piece of mail,
Yes.
does it turn out? Has she shown some symptoms, and has she been tested?
She has shown some symptoms, and we got her to a doctor a week ago tomorrow. At the same time that my assistant went up and saw a doctor who for the first time said, we can't rule this out. And she's doing okay mentally and physically as well. We're waiting for the test results to come back. She is on Cipro,
right,
as my assistant was from the time that she got treated 2 weeks ago today for what the doctor thought was another kind of infection.
Would it be fair to say, and I'm trying to put myself in your position, had it been in my office, that you cover this story in Florida, you hear about this, and then someone comes to you and says, perhaps, and you think, it can't happen here?
That's kind of what goes through your mind. And it was always at the back of my mind, and I talked at length on Tuesday to the world's leading authorities on anthrax, who are Army doctors, and got her on the phone with them, got the biopsy to be sent down so that we could get this expedited through 2 different laboratories. And on the phone, these people who know more about it than anybody in the world said, we don't think it is, at the end of the conversation.
Let me ask you a question, and as 2 NBC employees, we cover this story. We know about the aftermath of the attacks on September 11th. Do you think that the systems here were vigilant enough, given the circumstances we're dealing with?
I don't want to, I do think it is now, Matt, and I think that I'd love to turn the clock back, as I have 2,000 times over the weekend.
What would you do differently?
Oh, I would have sent her to other doctors earlier, insisted on biopsies earlier. I would have, I suppose, if I'd known that, if I'd seen that, but she's so self-contained in so many ways, and was at once reassuring to me that she was going to be doing fine on this, but at the same time was undone. And I will never ever again take mail casually. I mean, I saw this letter, read it, and one of the reasons I noticed that there was a misspelled word in it, and I said, oh, look at this, can't even, they sent me a threatening letter, can't even spell it correctly. We've been immune to this over the years. That immunity has come to an end. The 48-hour deadline for Saddam Hussein to leave Iraq has expired.
Go ahead and turn north now.
This could be the big one. Let's make sure we get it right.
Operation Iraq Freedom is underway. Saddam Hussein, we're now told, was the target.
A few hours later, Saddam Hussein appeared on tape denouncing the president as Bush Jr., a criminal.
They're calling it Route Hurricane through the southern Iraqi desert. We're with the 2nd Brigade, the 315 Infantry. They were the first unit from this division to enter into southern Iraq last night.
Pillars of smoke climb into the skies. The palaces of Baghdad, the pride of Saddam Hussein, leveled in a series of punishing blows.
The Iraqi army had been laying in wait for days on this road. As the Americans came north, they opened fire with everything they had. And the Americans answered with everything they had.
Let's see, stay down, stay down. Is it hard to determine who is the soldier and who is the civilian?
Yes, it is.
A car had rammed one of their checkpoints where they had a tank and armored personnel carriers, and they are saying that 5 soldiers were killed.
Helicopter to land now. We got a critical patient, needs to get out of here.
Among 4 Marines injured today, Lance Corporal Joshua Menard.
I just wanted to call and talk to you. I'm okay.
We are in a fierce sandstorm right now in south central Iraq. The sandstorm has become so fierce that you can't see more than maybe 15, 20 feet in front of you.
We took fire on the way in. We looked for some type of security, over.
The Chinook ahead of us was almost blown out of the sky.
Would you call this American-held territory?
Wrong.
Yeah, they don't like us very much here.
The buildings in front of it just lit up in smoke. The Marines are very aggressive out there. It looks like a scene out of Apocalypse Now.
And I just got this feeling in my gut that the further north we get, the worse it's going to get.
The preponderance of the Republican Guard divisions that were outside of Baghdad are now dead. We're not softening them up, we're killing them.
We have the means, if we want to level that place. And so we can compel a surrender.
You know, their tank guns have a certain range to them. Our tank guns have a longer range.
What do you expect those troops to encounter once they arrive in the capital city?
Certainly, Iraqi people, it is a brave people. They will not welcome this army.
An English-speaking Iraqi citizen came up to me and said, "Are you a journalist?" I said, "Yes." He said, "There's an American soldier who's being held in that hospital, and they're torturing her." On a moonless night, a well-timed plan, ending with good news. Jessica Lynch is no longer in harm's way.
We crushed the forces in Saddam International Airport, and we cleaned the whole place of the airport.
Davy's got the shot!
American troops seized the biggest prize of the war so far, Saddam International Airport.
The Marines take them down, just like we've been taking them down for the last 3 weeks.
At the break of dawn, the Americans rolled into Baghdad as if they owned it.
Welcome in Iraq.
Our people will sing and dance over the dead bodies of the evil ones.
U.S. troops paid a rather violent house call to one of Saddam Hussein's palaces inside Baghdad, invading his bedroom, even his bathroom, complete with gold plumbing.
But tonight, depending on where you are in Baghdad, it sure feels and it sure sounds and looks like a hot zone.
I'm telling you, I'm a journalist and a doctor. I know it's very scary. Okay? You're gonna live. You're gonna be fine. Just shot me in the leg.
In another war, it could have been a mountain with a number or a beach with no name. Were it not for these pictures, no one would remember this. I'll never forget it.